Images of Maryland 1900 to 2000 is made possible on MPT in part by the Maryland Commission for Celebration 2000, creating a legacy for the future with activities and events in the arts, education, environmental stewardship, historic preservation, and human services. More information is available on the Maryland 2000 website. And by Ice Cold Productions Incorporated, an affiliate of Morgan Creek Productions, James G. Robinson, Chairman and CEO.
The fleecy, wind-blown garments of the sky rival the finest man-made drapery and bring new scenes every hour of the day. What has been wrought this moment changes the next and vanishes the next, and a new scene is ushered on the stage. These are living pictures from a living God. Leo Beachy, 1915.
Leo Beachy knew about pictures, and his appreciation for the beauty of Appalachian Maryland was boundless. The world beyond these hills may have been in turmoil, but Leo Beachy focused on more private struggles and victories closer to home.
Here I can have, without money and without price, pictures galore, far better than any your city may offer.
In his brief life, Leo Beachy began capturing his world at the late age of 31, after a photographer failed to show up to record a school building in which he was teaching.
I turned to the medium of the camera to give expression to my thoughts. It was so easy and delightful for me that I did not know other people might not learn so easily.
Mr. Beachy's photos have stood the test of time because of how personal they are. Photos from that time tended to show very stoic people with stoic expressions. And his photos, you can hear them giggling or being amused, enjoying themselves. And I think that that makes them much more real to us. We can relate, we can understand that those babies are like our babies. And we could have loved them in the same way that we love our own children.
There was one photograph I remember he did of two children. They had these little hats on, and the little hats looked like gnomes. And the umbrella you could think of as a toadstool or something. I think he had an understanding of children and affinity with them because I think he felt that they understood his world and saw things maybe the way he saw them, things more with a newness and a wonder.
It is easy, you know, to make pictures that look like the sitter, the subject before you. But to get portraits that actually are the sitter, that is the great task.
Making a portrait for Beachy was an opportunity to playfully construct an image from available props. A tire held by one sister is used to frame another. In another playfully made portrait, two people sit in an automobile while someone holds an owl to the hood of the car. The man in the car grins broadly. Smiles were so infrequent in photographs at the time, one could almost say they had not yet been invented.
But Leo Beachy left more than heart-tugging peeks at youngsters and their parents living in turn-of-the-century Appalachian Maryland. Historians revere his documentation of the physical landscape.
This happens to be one of my favorite sites. It is because of people like Leo Beachy that we have historic visual legacies, not just of the historic structures which remain today, but also those historic sites, even the landscapes which have long ago vanished.
Without Leo Beachy's photographs, important parts of those regional landscapes would now be mere footnotes in the region's history, mentioned only as occasional folklore. This lake was formed by a dam on the Castleman River and once was a community gathering place. For residents from nearby Grantsville, its cool, pristine water made an idyllic playground. Local lore has it that one day, a young boy fell off the structure that formed the lake. A nearby adult dove in to save him. Neither boy nor man came back alive. The lake was no longer a place of joy. The dam was broken up. Its battered form lies abandoned and unnoticed in the daily rush of modern life. Its happier times recorded only in the photos of Leo Beachy.
We're here at the oldest structure in Garrett County, standing at its original location. It was rehabilitated in the late 80s, early 90s. The oldest known picture of this structure was taken by Leo Beachy. 70 years after he takes this photograph, the town and the community have developed this consciousness that this is indeed a structure worth saving. It's our house. That's something that Leo Beachy contributed to.
Perhaps Beachy's most important documentation of the drastic changes going on in his world was of his fascination with the development of the road he called the Ocean to Ocean Highway and what we now know as Old Route 40.
People go over these curved roads at a feverish rate and are blind to the beauties which nature lavishes out on all sides. I've been trying to depict some of the beauty, to cause people to take time enough to notice at least what a beautiful and bountiful world they are traveling through. We pass this way only once. Our follies are so costly.
Leo Beachy would never take the new road from one ocean to the other. From age 16, he was afflicted with a mysterious illness. We now know that the disease that left his legs nearly useless was multiple sclerosis. His sister Kate had to carry him on her back 3 times a day from the house to the studio. For his travels around Garrett County, he would first have to be carried to a wagon. Then arrangements were made at the other end of his journey for people to help him down and to set up his bulky equipment that produced the 5x7 glass negatives. None of Leo Beachy's writings complain about his physical helplessness in the performance of his photography, but his feelings about the medical world at the time, which did not recognize multiple sclerosis, was a different matter.
And as for doctors, I've been drugged by the allopaths, rubbed by the osteopaths, and bilked by the quackopaths. They've doped me with castor oil, rubbed me with sweet oil, and soaked me in hard oil. I've tried everything, from soothsayers to the Ouija board. Now, if you know of anything new, just trot it out, and I'll put it through its paces.
By 1927, the disease won over the struggle. At age 53, Leo Beachy was dead. What was left from an arduous life filled only with the delight of being able to record his mountaintop world was about to die with him. His only request about how he was to be remembered would be literally shattered. In the lofty prose of the time, he had written a simple obituary for himself.
I want to be remembered in the hearts of men and women, girls and boys, as one who joyfully strove under difficulties to bring many pictures before them with pen and camera that would make them see and appreciate many beautiful scenes of God's creations, and as one who did his best to make them see visions. Where there is no vision, the people perish.
But with the photographer dead, there was no one to defend the years of work. The family decided that the old studio was needed to house pigs on the family farm.
As a child, I remember just taking thousands of those glass plates, throwing them on the old dump wagon, and they took them back to the Laurel Run and dumped them in the creek. Somebody asked me if I didn't feel bad. Sure, I feel bad, but after all, I was only 5, 6 years old, and I did what my peers told me to do.
But Maxine Beachy Broadwater has more than compensated for mistakes made in the innocence of childhood. For the past 30 years, this retired Grantsville librarian has made it her life's mission to collect the remnants of her late uncle's photographs. Of the estimated 200,000 glass plates that Beachy may have taken in his brief lifetime, 2,500 have miraculously survived, many recovered from a Garrett County dump.
I feel as though he's looking over my shoulder and even patting me on the shoulder and saying, Maxine, you're doing a good job.
Leo Beachy took thousands of glass negatives all around the county in all kinds of weather, of all kinds of people. People working, people at play. There's a lot of humor in his work. Thousands of these. And then out of those thousands were lost and disregarded and unappreciated, hauled off to the dump, given away. Out of those, a few remain. We don't know if they represent his best work or not, probably not, but there's a lot of good ones among those that remain. From a historical viewpoint, it's priceless.
Baltimore news in a moment, but first, weather today will be partly cloudy with temperatures in the lower 60s. In other news, Baltimore Mayor Bill
If A. Aubrey Bodine could have had his way, every day from 1920 to 1970, the forecast would have called for partly cloudy skies. Clouds in just the right place at just the right time are part of his extensive photographic legacy. If the sky at the time wasn't dramatic enough, Aubrey Bodine could fix that by finding just the right cloud from his extensive collection. He earned the right to change skies and other parts of photographs the old-fashioned way. He worked hard at it. He frequently hand-shaded prints, painstakingly adding shadows and highlights with inks. And while doing so, he developed a pictorialist style of photojournalism all his own.
In the 1920s, Bodine became very involved with pictorialism. It's a style that was the aesthetics of painting as applied to photography. When he joined the Baltimore Camera Club in 1924, he was joining a group very involved in pictorial photography. And one of the things that they did was to participate in national and international photographic salons.
Aubrey Bodine's participation in these competitions was important to him because they kept him in touch with the pictorial photography world. But they also netted him countless awards and prizes. Among his most spectacular cash prizes, $5,000 for the 1948 Choptank oyster dredgers. Bodine began the journey to photographic legend at 14 when he was hired by the Baltimore Sun as a messenger in 1920. He craftily worked his way into the newspaper's editorial photography department. In 1927, he was hired by the Sunday Sun, where he worked for the next 43 years.
I was Aubrey's boss, but he never really had a boss. He would do what you would ask, but he would do it on his terms. We did not have a good picture of this particular building. Say this was February. He said, I'll make it in late May. And he knew that the sun would be on its right axis in May. He wanted the flags out. He wanted the sidewalk cleaned up. Aubrey also asked his wife to call up the police department, have no parking signs put up. On the appointed day, he went down there at 5 o'clock in the morning, put up his tripod, his camera, which looked like something that had been left on the battlefield by Matthew Brady, and made the picture in about 2 minutes and was finished.
It was Bodine's precautions, even without his famous darkroom magic, that produced the more than 10,000 negatives of his work available to the public and under the care of the Maryland Historical Society.
If it was in Maryland and beautiful or interesting, or beautiful and interesting, chances are Aubrey Bodine took a photograph of it. I work mainly with the negatives. I don't often work with the salon prints that Bodine is most famous for, but I can tell you that everything that he is noted for, composition, lighting, a sense of the right moment to trip the shutter, is all there in the original negative.
Aubrey Bodine more than appreciated his home state and the world around him. Documenting the beauty he saw was his obsession. His daughter Jennifer inherited a love of light and how it affects the way we see the world. But instead of recording it in photographs, Jennifer Bodine likes to create works of stained glass that saturate the eye with gleaming colors.
His work was everything. When I look back on my father, that is all I recall. He worked 7 days a week. He was up very early. He came back sometimes late at night. Sometimes he was gone for days at a time, off on assignments.
There were occasions when a very young Jennifer Bodine learned firsthand of the hard work it took to create her father's photographs.
I got dragged out onto a boat. It was around 5 a.m. It felt bitter cold. Rain was coming down. He was in heaven. I mean, this beautiful picture, but physically wretched. If you look at the oyster dredger's picture, you look at the weather that was shot in, and this man could not swim. He was hanging over the side of the boat. I can remember one time also, he wanted to take a picture of snow. He wanted just to take a picture of snow coming down that he would dub into pictures. And I had to hold lighting gizmos, and snow just poured down my neck, down my shirt. I was soaking wet, and I was standing out there like for 2 hours. I mean, finally, I started crying. It was so miserable. Didn't matter. We were out there until he was done. Shut up and hold the light. Okay.
30 years after his death, it is her father's obsession with documenting Maryland at just the right time that keeps the Bodine name alive in the world of photography. In this art gallery on Washington, D.C.'s DuPont Circle, the name Bodine on a photograph attracts the interest of collectors.
There is a mystique about Bodine's work, and it also has a nostalgia about it. Looking back at a time that's gone, he photographed places in Maryland that are now shopping malls that were farms outside of Baltimore. When I started working with the Bodine family back in the 70s, I was thrilled if we could sell a Bodine photograph for $500 or $600. I would buy those back in a heartbeat if I could today, and most of them are selling in the $1,800 to $5,000 range.
And it's not only the prints that are bringing in paying customers. In 1952, the first book of Bodine's photographs was offered. My Maryland contained 174 pictures that Bodine carefully selected from an estimated 25,000 photographs. It had 4 printings. 3 other picture books followed. Teresa Johansson is co-owner of one of Baltimore's premier bookstores, specializing in old, rare, and out-of-print books.
This has the first Christian church. There's always been an interest in Aubrey Bodine's books. Lately, within the last 5 years, they've been selling in a different way. I'll have people call from California, Chicago, all over the country. In the photographs, there's a sense of a simpler America, a very positive view of America. It takes a lot of photographs of the working men, especially here in Baltimore, since it has been, for many years, a working man's city. And there's a sense of integrity, a sense of respect, and that this work and this play is good and to be respected. And I think people like that, especially Americans. It appeals to Americans.
Bodine found drama in everyday events and beauty in his principal subject matter, Maryland.
Bodine's biographer and friend Harold Williams says that the photographer's best work was done between 1943 and 1960. In that time, he probably won more awards and honors than any other newspaper photographer, achieved an international reputation for his salon work, and was on the way to becoming a legend in his own time. But it was also during this period he was forced to seek steady medical assistance for a series of ailments that worsened as he aged. He suffered from hypertension, reoccurring violent headaches, and diabetes. His friends and colleagues began urging him to slow down.
His work was everything to him. I remember once, toward the end of his life, when he was in failing health, saying to him, Aubrey, you've established your reputation. You're internationally known. You've won many, many prizes. You are the equivalent of a superstar in Maryland. Why don't you just slow down and take it easy? And he said, I can't slow down. My work is my life.
Bodine would prove that the words to his colleague at the Baltimore Sun were deadly accurate. He became ill in his darkroom, and the company nurse called a doctor and told him she thought Bodine had suffered a stroke.
Colleague colleagues reported that Bodine, who was resting in his chair, picked up a dark-room towel and wiped a tear from his cheek. Then he sat until an ambulance arrived. He died this afternoon at the Johns Hopkins Hospital from a massive stroke. A. Aubrey Bodine will be remembered by millions as the man whose photographs recorded.
For 25 years, Henry Phillips lovingly shared his photographic observations from the pages of the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper. He didn't fool the eye with darkroom magic when portraying his Baltimore. He lived it, loved it, and photographed it, just the way it was. As a young soldier, Henry Phillips served in the European and African theaters of World War II. And it was there he learned to use a camera, a lesson self-taught that would eventually produce a photographic legacy.
I thought that Henry Phillips was a very understated, quiet man on a mission. He told the other side of the story that in spite of the hardships of being an African American in this country, that we still made a life of substance and meaning and dignity and elegance.
Frank Phillips, Henry's brother, was living just that kind of life. As the art director for the Baltimore Afro-American, it was Frank that got Henry a job on the newspaper. Henry would eventually become head of the photography department.
Afro was so big then, there were other Chicago Defender, Amsterdam News, all these other black papers, but Afro was so big and encompassing, so that's why they sent him all over, and everybody welcomed him in because that was the paper that exploded all the news with black folks.
Also exploding was the technology of taking unposed photographs.
What contributed tremendously to the power of storytelling through photography was the invention of flashbulbs. Photojournalists like Phillips had been freed from the tripod and slow film speed and could work anywhere, day or night.
Henry Phillips made the best of that freedom. He used it when he captured Baltimore's legendary nightlife. Ella Fitzgerald, known for her voice that flowed around rhythms, also displayed uncanny precision of a different type for a ping pong game so impromptu, the trademark fur coat stayed on. Duke Ellington, one of America's greatest composers and Washington, D.C. native, seemed equally at home playing in Baltimore. Louis Armstrong came to town to single-handedly blast the music world out of its tired traditions.
The music tradition here in Baltimore was really critical because we know that in the years after he shot those pictures, we dismantled that part of Pennsylvania Avenue, and the Royal Theater no longer exists. These were wonderful moments for us where we could shine or where we could just have fun. Henry Phillips was there with his camera, right on time, quietly just shooting, shooting, shooting.
The legacy left by that lifetime of shooting is in the hands of Henry's son, Irving Phillips, Jr., now retired from the Baltimore Sun, where he spent 25 years shooting photographs. Much of his time is spent in his basement, where with other family members, he goes through the thousands of negatives taken mainly between 1948 and 1973.
He loved what the Afro stood for, reflecting black history, capturing the moments of American history.
And Henry Phillips was very adept at capturing moments. We were just so absolutely grand and wonderful and so thoroughly enjoyed the life that we could create for ourselves in spite of the horror of living in a mainstream America where it was a constant struggle and a battle.
And when it came to the battle itself, Phillips' camera was on the front lines.
He always said, it's not what a man does. He said, all men do the same thing. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. We're there to record the history, and we're there to be journalists.
It may have been the Afro-American newspaper that put Phillips in the right place at the right time to document events. But it was pure Phillips artistry that captured the right moment. At Martin Luther King's funeral, when two women met whose faces reflected a mutual understanding about loss, Phillips made a photograph that required no caption.
My favorite photo was the picture he took of Coretta Scott King at Martin Luther King's funeral with Jackie Kennedy. That picture of them was the only one like it. No other person in the whole country got the exact same picture he got. And I think it was only one other person that got the two of them together.
Phillips had a very sensitive eye and understood that his role was to tell a story through his photographs. Billie Holiday, who he photographed on the street, is just another shopper, but she clutches the purchase she made at the liquor store. Phillips perceptively showed Holiday's companions looking concerned and walking a step behind her, like ladies in waiting for a tragic queen.
Each particular moment meant something, and you really had to concentrate when you're looking through that eyepiece. It's all about recording the moments. You stop that moment of history forever. It'll never happen again. We got this shot of Jackie hitting that home run. We got him stealing home stuff I have never seen anywhere in books. We got Roy Campanella and Satchel Paige together in the batting case. He's got a ton of stuff on the Negro Leagues. Josh Gibson, he's got a cup in his hand. They're pulling him off. He must have had a collision with another player.
They call him a one-shot man. I was a retouch artist then, and most of his pictures didn't need retouching. He was so good, he'd never make a bad picture.
He believed everybody was just important as the next person. The littlest girl he took on the corner, or families got together, weddings, he believed they were all just as important.
Phillips' photographs remind us about how special we are as human beings. He was in service to his community and to his people and to his family. This was his passion.
So strong was that passion that somehow the very makeup of the Phillips genetic code seems to have been affected. Not only did two of his sons become photographers, but now there's a grandson in the picture-making business.
The pictures and the history kind of just rubs off on all my little cousins or all the rest of the family members. All have pieces of history because everyone's been with him one time or another, taking pictures.
One for him taking the pictures and them printing them, you know, a lot of stories wouldn't have got told. It wasn't work to him. And he did that till almost the day he died.
He was greater than great. He was well known, and all he had to do was walk down the street and everybody, you know, waving, hollering at him, because he was a real friendly person. After his death, I had to draw a cartoon. Well, that was a rough one that I ever done. I was crying the whole time I was working on it.
His photographs are images that have tremendous humanity and warmth. You want to love looking at them a long time. And pictures do that for us. They charge our passions and the warm memories or even the sad memories. We get to relive them again and we get to connect them into the reality of where we are in our history.
It is said, for most of us, the daily beauty we are surrounded by is merely ground to pass over. But a blessed few of us can know and see things otherwise. Half a century ago, Marion Warren began using his gifts of knowing and seeing the beauty of this state.
I followed in the footsteps of Aubrey Bodine, and I was sort of in awe of him. And the one thing I didn't want to be was a copycat. And Aubrey had made a picture of the Wye Oak. It was done with infrared film, so it looked like a white tree. So I went over to photograph the Wye Oak when the leaves were just opening, but it wasn't a winter scene of it. One of the things I really enjoy about my photographs is that I have documented things that cannot be documented today. Here's a picture of a dredge boat pulling up oysters over the side. On the deck is piled high with oysters. Doesn't happen anymore. So this whole system that I've been photographing will be history. And I'm glad to have been a part of recording history.
Marion Warren began noting and documenting what was happening in Maryland after moving to Annapolis from the Midwest with his wife, lifetime companion and business partner Mary, in 1950. His move to Maryland came after an already impressive photographic resume. After a brief stint with the Associated Press News Service, he decided he preferred more creative work. A major turning point in his career came when, as a photographer for the U.S. Navy, he had a chance to present some of his work to one Captain Edward Steichen.
Steichen was in charge of documenting the Navy war effort in photographs and was already quite famous. He flipped through a stack of Warren's photographs and stopped at one. It was a candid image made in 1941 of a couple on a dance floor.
And that was a turning point for me in my photography because I realized what he saw in that was a natural, non-posed photograph. And I just made up my mind that was the kind of photography I was going to do.
Life in the U.S. Navy also provided him with other opportunities. When a wave with the rank of yeoman named Mary Giblin agreed to write captions for photos, he ended the workday by taking her to dinner. They were married in 1943.
Two people that were always involved in my photography was my wife. She worked with me. She was usually with me when I made pictures. And as a child, Mame got to where she liked to go with me on assignments. She said she was very much aware that I was always looking, that I was always seeing pictures.
Since my father was out and about so much, that was a way of having what we now call quality time. I also spent a lot of time in the darkroom. All that magic was happening. You know, a blank piece of paper went into the water and a picture came up. It was exciting.
Now, there's our print.
It was daughter Mame who collaborated with her father on 4 books of historic photos. It was also Mame who worked with her father to publish Bringing Back the Bay.
I wanted to emphasize people in that book. I wanted to really not just show scenery of the rivers and farms and things. People say how natural all these people look. It's because I have the technique and the ability to get them back to what they were before I pointed the camera at them. Because there's no sense in just doing mugshots of them. They have that on their driver's license.
One of the, I think, most interesting insights I ever heard about my father's work was that he'd never grown out of being a Midwestern farmer. And as I went out with him then and saw him and saw how he interacted with his subjects, I said, it's just 2 guys talking over the fence. They happen to have a camera between them, but it's just 2 guys exchanging tall stories at the country store.
Through the years, Marion Warren has developed a style and technique that has produced images that can accurately be called classics.
Marion Warren has the heart of a poet and the curiosity of a scientist. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is truly one of his most extraordinary images. It is industrial, but the line of the bridge is echoed in the clouds right up to the moon, connecting it with the cosmos.
Probably next to the Bay Bridge, my most dramatic and recognized photograph is a picture that I made the first winter we were in Annapolis. It was a snow picture looking across Spa Creek. This was a sleeper picture. It's a picture of oyster dredging, and I was quite disappointed because it didn't have any drama to it. And about 5 or 6 years later, I was looking through my negatives, And I came across this particular negative, and I said, you know, that's got a lot of composition to it. I made prints of it then, and again, it's been one of my best-selling photographs.
Thank you, Marion, for being willing to lend your special talents to the project Between Two Rivers.
My pleasure.
His ability to see things and to document them for posterity now brings him the awe he himself once reserved for A. Aubrey Bodine. But none of this has happened without hard work, nor without having to face some of the less romantic changes brought on by the very thing Warren is known for so eloquently documenting: the inexorable march of time. In 1997, Marion Warren underwent surgery for colon cancer. Shortly before that, his wife Mary was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. His security in having a lifelong companion was shaken, and so was the feeling that tomorrow meant another day's work on another project.
This whole episode really changed my whole philosophy on life, where I took it for granted before that. I mean, heck, every another day and another project. Now I don't look at it that way. Now I look at it that I got to get it done. Well, hello, neighbors.
We're very, very lucky to still have my father. If ever there was a miracle man, it's he.
When I got out of rehab, I had about 3 or 4 months of hair, and it was long and curly. And oh, everybody said how cute you are with those curls. And so I set up 2 cameras and focused on the other camera with me behind it. I said, "Smile, damn it." And I snapped it, and it shows my every wrinkle and my every blemish. And I figured if I could do it to others, I could do it to myself.
I think Father came up with the idea of doing Friends and Neighbors because it was something he could do. He could invite people into our home, or he could take Mother with him into their homes, but it was something small, intimate, manageable. And it's given Mother a lot of pleasure, too, to be part of that.
Marion Warren's next project is the perfect assignment for a man who's been documenting Maryland since 1950. A photographic history of Baltimore's Charles Center.
I loved those old buildings. I just thought it was a shame to tear them down. And sort of in protest, one day, here was 2 very modern white buildings, and here were 2 of the old iron front buildings left. And it's still one of my favorite pictures because I make a statement.
Marion Warren plans to continue making his photographic statements. His life's work will always be available to the public because of a generous donation of more than 100,000 of his images to the Maryland State Archives.
The really remarkable thing about his gift was that it was made with very few stipulations on it, just primarily that he has access during his lifetime. Other than that, it is a gift to the state. It is a gift to the people of Maryland. And we are talking a magnificent career here. And very few people have made gifts like that. I'm very proud of him.
There is a Maryland that most of us only occasionally visit. It's a place filled with creatures different from ourselves. Middleton Evans has spent much of his professional life here.
It's the best feeding is close to the water line, but that's where they have to be careful so they don't get washed away.
Even when visiting one of Maryland's most popular resorts, it is life at the harsh physical edges that attracts him.
Photography is just an excuse to be in the place where you really want to be. I do not feel alone, even if it's me and 100 birds. It really is not just something that I do for a living, but it's something that's very healing for me and just brings me great pleasure.
There we go. That's the shot I want. Yep.
Middleton Evans' pleasure in photographing this state's wildlife has also brought enjoyment to thousands of his fellow Marylanders. His book of the state's animals, Maryland's Great Outdoors, is the result of 3 years of working in places and seeing sights that most people, well, see only in photographs.
And I'm just kind of a conduit or a middleman, if you will. I'm simply presenting it to them in a clean, concise, hopefully artistic manner.
No subject matter demands color imagery more than nature. With the insight of a biologist and the problem-solving ability of an engineer, Evans carefully plans his photographs of egrets and bald eagles, always mindful of light and color.
Now, if I'm photographing wildlife, oftentimes I like to get really tight with my subject. Oh, that's great. Very natural. He is so photogenic. Boy, he sure doesn't move around much, does he?
If there is any magic or secret to some of his work, Evans freely shares the process behind his art.
Here we are photographing a porcupine, which is not an animal that you would normally see in Maryland. They do occur here, but it's very rare when one is found. That's a beautiful shot right there. Look at that. Now this is a captive animal. It's being used for a photo shoot, but he was caught in the wild, I believe, out west, I heard. Let's see, I'm just trying to keep ahead of him. He's looking for food. There he goes. All right, that's nice. It's definitely one of the best jobs in the world. How often do you get this close to porcupines? Hey, buddy, how are you? I usually like to photograph my animals eye level. It makes for a more dramatic photograph. Now, a lot of box turtles have bright red eyes. I hear that they live longer than people typically. You can come out now and play. There we go. That's a good shot. Woohoo! It worked that time. Usually it doesn't work. Can't fool a wise old owl. I do a lot of my bird photography, or at least raptors, in captivity, just because they're very hard to approach in the wild, hard to find.
And of course, there are times when even the most inventive wildlife photographer can't go to the birds. He has to make the birds come to him.
Songbirds are one of the hardest birds to photograph, and there are several techniques that you can use to get close. One of the things you can do is play a screech owl tape, which upsets the birds since screech owls prey on small songbirds, among other things. Come on, birdies, come on in. Instead of flying away, what they do is mob the owl, or in this case, a tape player. They try to drive the owl away and so that it gives up its cover, and thus eliminate the danger. These things move so quickly. That's why songbird photography is extremely difficult.
Difficulty has never stopped the work of Middleton Evans. For most of his better-known wildlife photographs, the only tricks involved were a combination of careful planning mixed with a heavy dose of patience.
You can spend many, many, many hours photographing one nest, and you might have only a couple seconds of peak moment to photograph it. I do a lot of my photography with a monopod because I can readjust my aim within a second or two. Technology is phenomenal, and it makes my job a lot easier. The lens can actually track a flying bird, and it automatically adjusts the focus as the bird moves. That being said, it's still really hard to keep a flying bird in the frame with a high magnification lens.
But there is obviously much more than technology at work in a Middleton Evans photograph. It helps in capturing a bird in flight, but it doesn't provide a creativity chip. Nor does technology explain a sense of the dramatic, reflected not only in his wildlife photographs, but in showing us parts of Maryland that we all thought we knew so well.
Dramatic subject matter is paramount in Evans' photographs. Baltimore is a well-suited subject matter for his style of image making. Evans puts life in his images by finding the life in the city.
Baltimore's famous for its ethnic festivals, and you just go for that magic moment and you get that expression and it really pops. Probably my favorite festival picture I've ever done is of the Kinderman at Artscape. It's really a joyous moment, and it's fun to see people let go and celebrate that joy that your children have and we lose as adults.
It was while putting his first book together, Evans developed his photographic philosophy, in which his native state plays a major role.
If I'm trying to capture the experience of what it's like to be a Marylander, then I'm going to show people doing things that we all remember doing as a kid in this state. And I shoot it in a very straightforward fashion. My pictures are not necessarily very artsy or modern looking, they're very traditional. One of my favorite photographs is of an Amish farmer in western Maryland, and he's on top of a wagon, and you can see the steam coming out from the chimney of the cabin. He is very, very small in the picture, but it absolutely makes the photograph. You know, I love those type of sentimental pictures.
That sentiment and tradition will grace the pages of a new book about Baltimore. And while this has kept his feet on the asphalt,
Thanks, I appreciate it.
his fascination with life far removed from urban streets will be the subject of Water Wings, a celebration of North American water birds, which sometimes documents nature in its rawest moments. Evans' photographic philosophy makes it easy to document both the urban and the natural world.
It's just all about discovery. It's not so much what you're discovering, it's the fact that you are discovering and are available to discover, and put yourself in that frame of mind. It's just really exciting to produce something of significance, and you're definitely leaving a legacy and something for future generations to remember how things were.
If they could come up a little bit, that would be great. Good, just keep coming like that. Thank you. Perfect.
Roger Miller, passionate, committed, intense.
Okay, we want to go a little down.
Roger Miller, squeezing all the